Hi, Nick. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. Great to talk to you too.
Great to chat to you. Easy question first. If you could kick off, bit of an elevator pitch for audiences, what can they expect from Theatre Camp?
Yeah, sure. So Theater Camp is a uh, improvised mockumentary comedy about a uh, rundown theater camp in upstate New York. A theater camp, because I know not everybody grew up around the concept of theater camp, but it's 3 weeks in the summer where you are sleeping in bunks and cabins and putting on usually like one production that the entire 3 weeks builds to, and lots of strange and wonderful adults come through to educate these aspiring thespians. And so this is about a specific camp where the founder has just recently gone into a coma at the start of the film, and the camp is taken over by her crypto bro son. And so it's about the tension between the theater loving staff and the new management, as they have to band together to save the camp.
And I'd love to hear kind of the backstory about how it all came about, because I know there's like lots of you have roots in theatre, and it's kind of started as this short film and then I guess escalated in a way into the feature film we see today.
Yeah.
I imagine you had a lot of fun writing and making it for starters, but also what's kind of the backstory?
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, it's all been a pretty fun journey. We grew up together in a lot of ways, the four of us who wrote this movie. Ben and Molly, there's footage of them doing theater together when they were little kids, and that's all very real and true. And then I met Ben and Molly when I was like 13, 14. And so we've been kind of making things all the way through, whether it's like sketches or prom promos or like whatever it was, we would make together. And so yeah, like 5-6 years ago now, we had this idea to do something in this world that we knew so well, which was our world of youth theater, and do something a little more structured, a little longer. And we made this short film, and made it in a lot of the same ways that we ended up making the movie, like improvised, super led by performance and by actors, lots of children, and playing with the kind of using children as like a straight man to these like ridiculous adults. And so yeah, we learned a lot from doing the short, and then just tried to find a way to do it on a larger canvas, and eventually got there.
And in terms of the form, I mean, I just love kind of the premise of it being like this mockumentary. But the fact there's kind of like this dual thing that it's doing, where at once it's sort of playing up for laughs and satirizing, the setting. But then at the same time, we do feel like we're actually in a theatre camp. There are the real songs, there are the real performances. So we're also enjoying them for real while sort of laughing at them. So how did you kind of come up with that concept, and what did you kind of want to do with it?
Yeah, well, I think it's true to our experience and true to how we really feel, which is this ability to look at how absurd some of the intensity around children's theater was, a sense of, just how ridiculous some of the material we were having to do as young children was. But at the same time, it's like so important to who we are and who we've been. And I think extremely valuable to have that exposure and that education in the arts early on. And I think that, like, knowing that we felt that in our bones, it was easy to tackle. On some level, it was easy to know that, like, no matter what jokes we would make, it would always come from a place of like genuine love for that world, and genuine knowledge of that world. Like, nobody could possibly walk away from something thinking that like Ben wasn't a theater fan. Like, he is certainly known for his relationship and connection to the theater. And so it's like we knew we had at least a little bit of goodwill to then to point at some of the more ridiculous aspects.
I even thought that, because I don't have a background in theatre, but more in dance. And I just like, a few of the sprinkled references I was picking up on, like the Fosse gang or whatever they are. But I imagine if actually for theatre geeks, there's so much more there that, might be going over the head of sort of lay audiences. So it is very much rooted in a lot of like true theatre shows and performances and musicals and everything like that.
Yeah, if anything, we toned it back in terms of how sometimes ridiculous and inappropriate the like adults can be with children. The kind of material that they come up with in the acting exercises, we tamed it a bit. But I think, yeah, we wanted to make a movie that certainly, if this is how you grew up like us, going to these kinds of camps, going to these kinds of classes, you would immediately recognize the world as true and as yours, and that there'd be lots of joy in the specific references, but that the comedy would be something that would play to anybody, and that really trying to honor the fact that theater can take a skeptic, theater can take people who have no particular vested interest in it and pull you in with the liveness, the commitment, the energy, the emotion, the music, like that it has so many tools at its disposal to win you over. And we wanted to take advantage of those tools as well.
And tell us about the filming of it, because the feeling that I really had is that it kind of sucked me in as it being a documentary, because it seemed so real. The fact that this was a full-blown summer camp, and there's sort of a casualness to the way, the camera's panning around, and it does feel like there's lots of going on in the background, which of course all had to be staged. So how did you kind of pull that off, particularly when you've got kids involved, kind of giving that really naturalistic feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think kids do inject a lot of that naturalistic feel innately. Like, I think it's a lot more challenging actually when you need kids to be like boxed in and hit an exact mark and hit the right I think part of an advantage we had was this loose approach we had to the world, and trying to just, we were shooting at an actual defunct summer camp. And we're very determined to, always shooting with two cameras conscientiously in a way that might make sense for a documentary crew to be covering the events that were unfolding. And I think that combination of enough just true given circumstances, and we worked with this brilliant DP, Nate Hertzellers, who's or not primarily, but has done a ton of documentary and has his roots in documentary. And I think that exactly what you're saying was really important to us, that it would feel like a lot of story was happening on the edges of the scenes, that like not every moment was plotted or connected directly to like some central plot, but that anything that would be happening would feel like, oh yeah, we could be focusing on these kids over here, or we could be focusing on that there was all these opportunities for story. We just happened to be picking this one lane through, which just other films have a much more closed. No, there aren't films like ours, but it's a different feeling than when you really feel you're on the rails of like, this is my reality and these are the characters that matter.
And of course you had to sort of rehearse and prepare all the music and the dance numbers and things like that. So I was thinking you almost had to do kind of as though you were doing a stage show while also doing a film. Like, did you have like a favorite scene or number or like a moment that was really challenging to kind of pull off?
Well, I would say that, the Studio 54 number, the disco number is one that, I think we all had like a total fantasy of how that might turn out, and just the combination of the material with the kids and that it was still kind of like sweet and playful in this way. And I think just all the departments and everything really came together to make that number possible. And it was like one of the last things that we shot. And after we were done, we like brought all the kids outside and said like, that's it, you're all wrapped on the movie. And so you just had these like bawling Debbie Harry and Liza Minnelli and all of the kids in their full like 70s costumes going through the emotional catharsis of this process being over. That was definitely one of my favorite parts of the whole process. Would you do a staging of Joan still? Because I feel like watch that. Yeah, I mean, I think we really love Joan still. We the soundtrack, which is out on streaming platforms, has fuller numbers. Even we wrote as each song as like a full production number. So yeah, no, the work that went into that was some of the most straight from our hearts of any part of the making of the movie.
And of course, we have to talk about your incredible cast. Obviously co-writers and co-directors as well. It's kind of all pitching in a bit, but particularly Molly and Ben right at the center. I mean, such great comic timing, and like you say, just kind of balancing this thing of kind of obviously everything's a bit heightened, but they're really approaching it like these real full-blown three-dimensional characters as well. It's not all completely silly, and they just do it so well. So what's it like working with them?
It's so wonderful. And so, the way in which we made this film, like reliant on improv in such a major way, it'd be hard to imagine making anything of this scale without that caliber of improviser and performer, and also writing it with them. We were so all on the same page about what the story was. There's nothing more exciting than like kind of having this vision of a scene and having talked about what it was, but still not having rehearsed it or drilled it down exactly. And all of a sudden the cameras are rolling and these moments are just like happening in front of your face that make it all work. Like there's a, not to give anything away, but there's this large, as fight scene between Molly and Ben's characters where they're having this large argument, and like not one word of that scene was scripted before we shot it. That's all just edited together from takes of them improvising. And we knew what all the beats of the scene were more or less, but yeah, I mean, they're just so funny. And Molly just comes up with like some of the craziest stuff that has ever come out of someone's mouth, and it just flows out of her. And so she's just constantly making everyone break and constantly like throwing things out even from the monitor when she's not in a scene, that I think just elevated the comedy game of the whole movie. And Ben and Noah, just had such commitment to their characters that was so amazing to watch, and like willingness, especially on Ben's part, to kind of tread into unlikability, crossing the line, intensity, and still give that person such heart and truth. It was awesome to watch.
And I don't know whether you ever sort of think about these aspects, but like, I haven't seen as much of like Ben's work, perhaps like on stage, but like seeing him, his role in like Pitch Perfect, and then Molly Gordon, obviously he's like, the Bear has been absolutely huge, particularly over here as well. So it's almost as well when you've seen actors in such different roles, and then you see them in roles like this. I think it gives like another layer of joy to see them play something so completely different.
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean, and Noah is very unlike, he's far more like Joan in the final musical than he is this meek tech guy, but it was fun to see him like really play a different kind of person than he's used to playing. And then of course we had the wonderful gift of Jimmy Tatro, who's so brilliant, and brings so much heart and veracity to this trope of a bro that we've seen enough times, where you want to see something different. And I think his heartfulness and the empathy that he elicits is pretty unique for that kind of character.
And in terms of the takeaways, I mean, of course, it's just absolutely laugh out loud, funny, hilarious. But there is genuine that feeling of when you watch a musical, it feels so kind of uplifting. And like you say, perhaps people who aren't so much into kind of musical theatre, maybe, you might kind of convert a few people. And then there's also some of these elements that do creep in about it being underfunded. Certainly this is the case in the UK, and not celebrated enough. And this thing of, commercialization, or God, everything now just has to be something that's, goes viral on TikTok or something like that. So there's kind of a little message that's underlying there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was really important to us. This idea that, human beings are more than just economic actors, and that arts education and having those experiences of being creative, being expressive, like even understanding what it means to play as somebody else, that those things are very formative and have a value that might not directly translate immediately, especially for kids, into like virality or financial success or anything like that. And not that I'm against STEM education, but I do think that there's a it's sometimes we can lose just the true deep value of these things that are a little more qualitative and I think having places like the theater camp in this film, as a mecca for all sorts of different kids is so essential, and is part of why we're seeing certain political movement happening, and like a difference between, I think, even like our generation and Gen Z, young people now. And I think, I hope that we keep going in that direction and also ramp up the support for those kinds of institutions.
Yeah, and just very funny because I'm out of time, but and this point about inclusivity, like perhaps outcast, right? Not in a high school group, you're not fitting in as a jock, or you're not going to go on and be an investment banker, but actually you have all these other skills and all these other attributes that can really be celebrated, and it comes across in the diversity of the cast too.
Yeah, totally. No, and I was like one of the youngest kids at my school, and I was like new in a weird grade, and then I got cast in a musical with Ben, and he became one of my best friends, and I'm sitting here talking to you. So it's like, it is amazing the way that like those experiences just can be super defining of one's life in a way that you just don't know. I personally maybe not bringing the most diverse perspectives, but I do think that these institutions are like so essential in that particular way as a home for lots of different kinds of people.
And you've had such a phenomenal response right from Sundance. Now it's getting really, had the release in the US, now in the UK. What does that feel like, and what will you be working on next?
Yeah, it feels amazing. It feels so wonderful to be in a little room in Brooklyn editing this movie, and then, have it out in the world and have people responding to it. It means everything to us. As for what's next, I mean, one of the main reason why I'm not sitting here with Ben, Molly, and Noah is because of the strikes that we're going through in the US. And those are very defining of all of our sense of what's next right now. I think that once an equitable and a reasonable deal can be brokered, I think that can be offered, then I think we are all eager to figure out more ways to bring stuff to the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me, and really can't wait for everyone else to see Theatre Camp. I honestly absolutely loved it. It really made me laugh out loud, but also found it very moving as well. So
thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Lovely to chat to you. See you. Thank you. Bye.